Tired of big tech clashing with your Catholic values? Feday Chat is now live on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. It's private, encrypted, and built by Catholics for Catholics, with features like parental controls and more. Connect securely with family, friends, and groups. Download Feday Chat at feday.email. Technology without compromise.
One of the tests for Pope Leo XIV's papacy was to see how much continuity there really would be between himself and his predecessor, Pope Francis. This continuity would be beyond what I call the superficial difference, and that superficial difference is a welcome change in his outward presentation, his adoption of at least post-conciliar traditional papal norms, garments, the way he carries himself, how he's unlikely to say nasty things to the media about Catholics that he doesn't like, those sorts of things. He actually speaks and sings in Latin, and all the things that gave people hope early on. But one of the true tests of this continuity, a continuity he promised us, he would continue the work of Francis. And people kind of danced around what he meant by that. The test would be, at least one of them, how much continuity is there on the secularization of the church? And by that I mean, in this case, the church adopting secular values, hosting secular conferences, taking secular issues and trying to baptize them and make them into Catholic issues. The predominant example of this in the church is the Laudato Si issue. All things green, worried about the thermometer, if you catch my meaning. Our hosts on every social media platform don't allow you to reject the official narrative on that topic, just as an FYI. But a real test for that would be on Laudato Si. And unfortunately, Pope Leo has repeatedly cited that document explicitly numerous times. He has actually dedicated one of the Vatican gardens to an ecological training site for people to learn how to be good activists. And he's even allowed a restaurant, which we'll talk about that in a moment, to be opened at the site that helps promote these kind of weird values. I don't know what those things have to do with the gospel. And I wrote my doctoral dissertation on that entire subject and the Catholic answer to it. And for the life of me, I actually don't know what Laudato Si and that entire movement has to do with the salvation of souls. But we have interesting news. You see, one of the hallmarks of the Francis papacy was the hosting of secular conferences at the Vatican. And now we have a quasi-secular conference being hosted by the Vatican with secular celebrities in attendance. We go to Catholic Sat, where he tells us that Arnold, the actor from the 80s who played the Terminator, whose last name, if you don't say it precisely purposely, sounds like naughty language according to their AI, so we just call him Arnold, you know who I'm talking about, will be at the Vatican for next week, meaning this week's Raising Hope for Justice Around the Thermometer conference commemorating the 10th anniversary of Pope Francis's Laudato Si. And one of the things that I find interesting here is the replies on X are saying things like, I don't recall the apostles nor Jesus preaching about that problem. I did read they were all spreading the gospel and salvation. And just people just going after what they said. Although I think this is the best one. Jesus said, I'll be back. Yeah, that's funny, haha. But in general, you kind of get the way how people feel about this. It's not exactly the most open topic anymore. People have had enough, I think. And if you want to know why people stopped donating money to the Vatican, I think it was Laudato Si that started that. That when Pope Francis endorsed that issue, it was the beginning of the end of people donating to the Vatican. Ted McCarrick being the ultimate thing and capping it off with Traditionis Custodes. And if you want to know what this event actually is, here is the press release published by the Vatican's website. It comes to us from press.vatican.va. I'll have links to this in the show notes at the Anthony Stine Substack, link in the description box below. But the press release is the International Conference Raising Hope for the Justice Around the Thermometer Problem, 10th anniversary of Laudato Si. Now, if you don't know, Laudato Si was the papal encyclical Pope Francis wrote on care for our common home, essentially endorsing the world's view and goals on care for creation and all things related to the environment. Here's what the press release has to say. Rome, dated the 25th of September 2025. From the 1st to 3rd of October 2025, the International Conference Raising Hope for this issue and justice will take place in Castel Gandolfo, promoted by the Laudato Si movement, which is a Catholic action organization, in collaboration with various ecclesial and institutional partners, on the occasion of the 10th anniversary of Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si. The event, bringing together more than 400 faith leaders, experts on this alleged problem, civil society representatives, that means your politicians and celebrities, and institutions from around the world, aims to chart the next steps in implementing ecological conversion in the light of the Church's magisterium. On Wednesday, the 1st of October, at the Mariapolis Center in Castel Gandolfo, the central moment of the conference will take place, the celebration of hope with the participation of Pope Leo XIV. And here are the program highlights. There'll be a welcoming and opening prayer, and then keynote addresses from Honorable Marina Silva, Minister of the Environment of Brazil, and, of course, Arnold. I wish I was making that up. And then addresses by Pope Leo XIV, and then something mysterious called a symbolic and spiritual moment of common commitment. I guess this is where you promise not to burn tires in your backyard or something. And then there will be a private meeting of the Holy Father with a representative group of participants. It also will include on the 2nd to the 3rd of October, a working sessions, roundtables, etc., including spiritual moments. Spiritual moments. That sounds suspiciously like it won't be Catholic moments, not adoration, confessions, that kind of thing, but something more synodal, more ecumenical in nature. There will be 50 prominent figures, religious leaders, I wonder what that means, scientists, civil society, and political representatives will be available for interviews and briefings with accredited press. That means that I can't show up there and ask questions. Maybe Diane Montagna will be able to ask questions, though. And then they give you some information on how to become accredited. So that's what that is. It's another conference on care for our common home to celebrate 10 years of Laudato Si. This issue is of such importance to the secular authorities that the church leadership in the last decade has used it as a means for essentially surrendering on Catholic morality issues to be super inclusive so that they can then keep the connection to the secular authorities going through their grants, their partnerships, and of course, adopting their issues and endorsing them, giving a slightly more conservative take on those issues than secular authorities typically do. I want to give you an example of the surrender on the moral authority of the church here. Let me go to zenit.org for this headline. James Martin type activist to run Vatican's new Laudato Si restaurant. Now, if this chef was somebody who was living that life but not an activist on it, it wouldn't be as bad. I'd still say it would be bad. But this is someone who was an activist on it. It didn't mean that they were maybe public about the way they live, but essentially expected you to treat them like any other married person. Instead, this is an activist, something fundamentally different. And this is the person who is now the celebrity face of a weird high-end restaurant at Vatican's Castel Gandolfo. There is a lot of mixed messaging going on here with this issue. Having a 5-star restaurant, something that might get a Michelin star in the next few years, at the Ecological Conversion Training Center. Weird stuff, and it shows you exactly who they expect to go visit the place. It's not for you and me. This is for elites and hand-chosen people who are, laity, running these Kateri Center for various ecological things. Those are the people they expect to come to this conference center, and that's who the clientele of the restaurant's going to be. Here are the details. The article is really short. The Vatican residence of the popes in Castel Gandolfo will have a new restaurant in the Borgo Laudato Si space, which will open in spring 2026. It will be run by chef Art Smith, a James Martin-type activist married in the United States to painter Jesus Salguero. Smith has worked for Oprah Winfrey and Lady Gaga and was chosen to lead the restaurant by a Vatican committee. Smith's appointment has sparked a debate due to the long history of that kind of activism. In 2006, he and his partner were inducted into the Chicago Disordered Hall of Fame, founded in 1991, which honors institutions and individuals for their outstanding contributions to the well-being of Chicago's community in question. In addition, the chef has promoted campaigns and events, such as organizing a ceremony with more than 100 couples for a fake nuptial ceremony. In 2015, Smith and Salguero, then went on to purchase the young ones and received a personal blessing, in quotes here, from Pope Francis, as the first disordered pairing to present their young ones to baptism at Chicago's cathedral. Zenit confirms a baptism, but has not been able to verify the special blessing for those kinds of pairings, argued by various media outlets recently. In other words, they can't confirm whether the blessing in line with fiducia supplicans happened or not, but it was Chicago. I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say I would bet the Chicago allowed it to happen. It, after all, is Cardinal Cupich. I would, in fact, be shocked if Cardinal Cupich didn't drop what he was doing and show up to give the blessing himself. Sorry if that sounds like it lacks charity, but if you've been following the stories about Cardinal Cupich in the last week, then you know why I say that. But this greener thing is the larger issue du jour in the church right now. It may not sound like it. We're in our little echo chamber, our little bubble here. We're talking about the Latin Mass a lot, whether we should surrender critiques of Rome so we might get the Latin Mass back or not. That seems to be the topic people in our space are talking about. But the real issue at hand is the dogmas and doctrines of the church and its relationship to the world. This issue here is one of many that shows how things have gone off the rails in the last several decades and how it's just continuing even after a bad papacy, under a new one who is, at least in temperament, on the surface better. And I say on the surface because a better temperament makes it harder for some people to recognize there are problems happening that need to be recognized for what they are. And so it can be argued that he's more dangerous than Francis. I'll let you decide if that's the case or not. My mind's not entirely made up on that myself. But let me know what you think of this in the comments, please. Hey, like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. Sharing this on social media helps too. And if you got this far in this video already, maybe consider supporting the work we do here. There's that subscribe plus button. That's the old YouTube join button. There are perks for supporting it through there, or Patreon, Subscribe Star. Support does help keep these daily messages coming and is greatly appreciated. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.